And welcome back. Just an update. As you know, the National Freedom Party has said that it's consulting its lawyers looking at approaching the Pietermaritzburg High Court, contesting the election results in Edumbe, saying that it believes that it's won 7 wards instead of the 6, which the IEC says. So the IEC itself is expected to make an announcement at 6 o'clock this evening on the final results of the elections. We will wait and see if they're allowed to do that. But let's look at the electoral process now and how the timing under COVID-19 has revealed that as much as they could have done, it takes a lot of work in setting up the mechanisms to deliver free and fair elections, and exactly what it takes to determine whether elections are free and fair. So as the dust settles after the local government elections, we'll also have to turn our focus to the municipal council meetings, as we know that 70 councils now are hung. So clear indications of that hung councils and the order of the day, how that will affect South Africa's 257 municipalities running. Thembelani Mazibuko is researcher at the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. Thembelani, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So let me start with the Electoral Deputy Chief Officer Nomsa Masuku saying during a media briefing at The Rock in Pretoria, she was saying that the Electoral Commission is committed to resolving complaints from parties. And as we speak, I mentioned that the NFP considering going to court over how many wards it believes it wins. There's been a lot of talk about, when we talk about votes that have been counted or completed or audited, the importance of that. So take us through that and how we could be at this point where the NFP is actually questioning what it's been allotted.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to your show. So you would also remember that the same thing actually happened in 2019 elections, where a number of smaller political parties were unhappy with regards to the outcome of the election. However, this sort of fizzled away. At the same time, the NFP in these elections are empowered and have a right to seek relief in a dispute mechanism such as the electoral court. They have that right to do so, and they are exercising that right. However, at the same time, as per the electoral cycle, the electoral calendar, which is contained within the broader electoral cycle, the IEC is also mandated to announce the results upon a certain time. There is a limit in terms of when the results must come out. While there are going to be challenges, at the same time, for democracy, it's important for the results to come out in a timely manner.
So let's stay with that, Thembelani. I mean, I heard Simon Mabolo saying we don't want to rush the auditors, which is an important thing, because I want to go back on the process a little bit. What happens when the votes have been cast, the party agents are sitting there counting the ballots cast, and actually when they all have to agree and sign what is being submitted to the provincial centres or the national centres. So the NFP is using at this point the fact that it says during the voting period and counting, their NFP agents got first information that the NFP won 7, not 6 votes. So how could this have happened?
So it can happen in the sense that party agents, while they themselves, there is an opportunity for them to sign the results. The fact that party agents within a voting station, the fact that party agents do not sign or do not endorse the results does not nullify the results themselves. Because let's say, for example, in perhaps a rural ward or far-flung ward that maybe is not as contested, there aren't any party agents. That in and of itself does not nullify the results of the election. So the party agents, while they have a right to be there as per the Electoral Act, but however, they do not have veto power in terms of the overall results. However, at the same time, and me and my team, we were observing elections. If there are disputes within a voting station, those party agents can lodge the disputes. It will be lodged in a book. and within the voting station. However, if, for example, one political party does not sign the final results, which are signed by the presiding officer as well, that does not nullify the election results.
So let's use that, Thembelani, as a teaching moment, especially the role of monitors and observers. I mean, you would have observed elections outside, and it's not every country where there is a strict adherence to the rights of party agents' right to be there. Now, how is South Africa different in terms of its electoral laws, its processes? You say that the inability of party agents to be there doesn't nullify the stringent measures that are taken by the IEC in terms of electoral health.
Yes, indeed. That is correct. I think in many ways the backdrop in terms of South Africa's IEC, the reason why it has enjoyed such high credibility is the transparent, first of all, is the legislation, the way the commissioners are picked. Also, South Africa has a very elaborate set of electoral laws. We have our own Electoral Commissions Act, for example. Many countries don't have that. So, and also the manner in which South Africa's IEC has conducted itself, it also helps that South Africa, for example, enjoys a vibrant media. I think that is often an understated effect of why the IEC enjoys such high trust within South Africa, within the global context. But I think apart from the IEC in and of itself, South Africa's strong institutions, other Chapter 9 institutions, and genuinely strong adherence to the rule of law leads, for example, and the fact that opposition parties almost always accept the final results, all of that plays into the legitimacy of the IEC.
Let's talk about legitimacy vis-a-vis transparency. The point has been made that in these elections, there's been very little report back on the incidents where there have been complaints or objections, if you're using the word interchangeably. Now, the IEC in the past would actually go through districts and say, this is what happened, this is how we resolved the matter. And I must agree with that because there's been very little of that. Some parties have expressed concern about voters' names not appearing on the voters' roll. There's also opposition parties, political parties in Bushbuckridge, for instance, who rejected the outcome of the results there, saying some ballot boxes from other wards had been tampered with the IEC. I want to talk about the possibility of this happening, and most importantly, I want to look at the VMDs, the voting management devices that has been raised as slowing down the voting process. Comment to me about some of these and how we've managed it, and has IEC been transparent about some of these challenges?
On election day, we visited about 18 different voting stations, and very soon, I think it was an Eldorado Park, we picked up this issue of VMDs. And to be specific, the issue was that if someone is registered in, say, Eldorado Park, but they find themselves in Midrand and they cannot go to Midrand, they have a right to go to their nearest voting station. If, however, they are registered within that municipality, and they only get one ballot, which is the PR ballot, they are not entitled to the ward ballot. However, we saw instances instances where the voter management device, what it did is that it kicked them and said, you cannot vote at all at this voting station. You must go to the one you registered for. So what we have here is a situation where it is acknowledged that you are indeed registered within this municipality. However, you cannot vote in this voting station, even though you are entitled to, albeit in only the PR ballot. So that is, and different presiding officers, there was no consistency in terms of how to deal with that issue. Because yes, some of them actually did allow them to vote because they reverted to the manual voting, the manual list of voters, which is what we've always used, and see this person is actually on the voters roll and is entitled to one ballot. So that is an issue. And therefore that led to some voters, unfortunately, and I've seen figures as high as 100,000 being disenfranchised. It's akin to you're in the Western Cape, but you are registered in Gauteng in a national election, you are still entitled to vote in the national ballot in the Western Cape, but obviously not in the PR ballot because you're not registered in not in the provincial ballot because you're not registered in the Western Cape. So that is something that the IEC has to sort out. And I was making the point just quickly, is that maybe it would have been better if the VMD was first implemented in a provincial and national election where there isn't specific voting stations where you have to vote for. You can vote anywhere in the province as long as you are registered in the province. Similarly, you can vote anywhere in the country as long as you're a registered voter. So the VMD's machine had teething problems, which hopefully the IEC will sort out.
And Thembelani does absolutely underscore the issue of voter education within the IEC and outside for the electorate as well. Thank you very much, Thembelani Mazibuko. He is a researcher at ESA, the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa.